I didn't realize it was me doing that again. Okay.
All right, welcome in. I apologize there. Sorry about that. A little bit of a lag on my end. We're all good tonight, though. Don't worry. No technical issues. We are live. Everything is up and running, man. The look Jordan gave, especially after last night, I can't fault him for that by all means. But no, we are up and running. A live before lock here, getting you ready for the 2-game slate tonight. And here's the thing. Normally, it's just the typical introduction. Myself, Terry McBride, we're thrilled to be here at Digital B21 on Twitter for Terry, at Shander Show for me. But honestly, I don't know what Terry is more excited about tonight. And I will add a third caveat in there, and that's providing fantasy nuggets and insight for you as you set your lineup. So that's the one, but then there are two maybe not so obvious ones. As you can see, or maybe he'll have to sit back just a little bit. He's got, there it is, the Melo jersey, as reference from last night's show, has made its appearance, and I know because I saw the tweet at God knows what time it was last night. Terry spent 9 hours researching the best birthday scene in a movie. All of that to say good evening, sir.
What's going on, my friends? Yeah, that was a big windup, but yeah, we had to break out the Melo jersey. You know, it's my teams tend to lose when I put the jersey on, so I'm a little bit worried about it, particularly when I'm like sitting at home, but we're going with it. I had to honor the person who called out Melo on us yesterday. They asked us a question and then hit us up like after he scored his first 2 points last night on Twitter, telling us we were wrong. I don't recall coming out like completely against it. I think I said he could have a decent game. Scored 26 FanDuel points. Wasn't in the winning lineup, by the way. But yeah, good call person out there. So little honor for them for the Melo jersey. And of course, supporting my Knickerbockers in their playoff efforts here starting tonight.
That was Ms. Eunuch on Twitter who called us out on that and wanted to make sure. And look, if you see Terry lack of budge on that, wait until you hear his theories on Die Hard being a birthday movie, because he's not moving even an inch on that one. And you're right. You know, there were a couple of surprises last night as expected, but nothing dominant overall. And look, there's always going to be the matchups, right? As far as, especially tonight with your Knicks and the Hawks. And then we have the late one clearly in Utah. But just overall, as we're watching LeBron, it's winding down right now. It's over actually right now. And there go the Lakers. A lot of low scoring games. And even with the Wizards trying to push that Sixers pace as fast as humanly possible, maybe even outside of that, we've seen a lot more lower scoring games. Is there any big takeaway you can actually come away with following the first couple of games so far in the postseason, Terry?
So we've done a lot of talking about it on the different shows over the last couple of days, and I think it's worth repeating, is that playoffs equal fairly secure minutes, fairly predictable rotations, whittled down rotations where teams aren't going to their 11th and 12th guy off the bench. They don't want those guys out there, and if they are, it's probably because somebody's in foul trouble. They want to keep a nice tight rotation, and yeah, teams are locking down on defense. You don't see the freewheeling as much. You don't see as you see more caring on defense, I guess I should say, a little bit more defensive effort than maybe we see on a random Tuesday night in the regular season. And who can blame these guys? You know, that's just how the game is played. So yeah, we see a lot more grind them out kind of games. It's not the 76 to 75 Knicks versus Heat games from the mid 90s that we used to get, But I think we're going to see a lot of games in the low hundreds, high 90s, and some really grindy defensive efforts, particularly from some of these teams like the Suns, like the Knicks tonight. I think this is going to be another game that, unless something goes completely haywire, probably pretty low scoring. So yeah, I think that's going to be a consistent theme as we progress through the playoffs for sure.
Be careful what you wish for, because before you know it, it's going to be 83-79 with 6 left in the fourth between the Knicks and the Hawks. And everybody's going to be talking about, remember those old series? And then you're going to be sitting there thinking, of all the things that I get right every time that we're on the Awesemo channel, I nailed this one. And here I am sitting, struggling for a team to get to 90. It's coming.
Oh, of course. That is Knickerbocker basketball for sure, going way, way back. So I think it's going to be a grindy kind of game. It's projected. It's a 213.5 total in Vegas. Neither of these games is projected for much scoring. They're both low. They're both defensive effort kind of teams, particularly that Memphis Utah game. Even at least Atlanta's kind of a high scoring, pacey kind of effort team. So the Knicks can match pace when they need to. I just think they would greatly prefer to grind this one down and not have to run, not have to match pace with these Hawks, who can light up the scoreboard between Trey and Bogdanovich and some of these other guys.
All right, looking at the slate, and again, 2 games, so we're going to try to get everything we can from Super Chat up and running, as well as the premium Slack. You have any questions, specific questions for Terry, make sure you hit us up. And then again, a bunch of what we're doing here is still growing with this amazing and large community. So we want to make sure that you continue to you continue to smash that button, share, subscribe, the notification bell, gigantic. So you don't want to miss shows like this as we lead you up to lock. Even on these 2-game slates, showdowns, whatever you may need to pull away from this, you want to make sure that you are always up to date and you're not jumping in half. I see it every now and again. Hey, what's up? What's up? Oh, I'm 30 minutes late. You never want to be 30 minutes late to a live before lock show, because unlike what happened last night, which was the anomaly, Terry, we are normally not going to go back and redo 15 minutes of content for people who are late.
Yeah, that's right. Last night was a special bonus treat for anybody who arrived late. They did get the full show, the full takes. But if you're showing up late, you're usually having to rewind to get those early takes that you need. So, best to be here on time. Best to subscribe so you get all those alerts when we go live. We got a ton of content all day about every sport. So there's a lot that you're missing if you're not doing that.
Looking at tonight, and earlier we were looking at just the difference of Randle based off of being able to play him at the power forward center DraftKings, and then kind of up with Embiid, who was on the earlier slate. But, a great place to start tonight, because still below 10K, really just over 9K on DraftKings. And I just don't know, maybe this is just the obvious takeaway here, but I just don't know what the anti or negative would be in rostering a hell of a lot of Julius Randle tonight.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more clear-cut plays on the slate, a guy that we can just kind of plug and play for reliability on both sites. He's going to be popular. It's not like you're getting him sneaky past anybody, like 63.2% ownership on FanDuel, 52.4%. But when we get into these 2-game slates, especially with these high-end guys who are going to be out there for the bulk of the game, and particularly with Julius Randle, that's very, very true, unless something crazy happens. So that makes a ton of sense. I would want to be over the field on both of those. Just like last night, I'm running some just flat unencumbered crunches. And on FanDuel, he's coming up across 500 lineups just using the straight optimals 91% of the time. So the first 500 most optimal lineups off the top have him in 457 of them on FanDuel. On DK, that number is 71%. The first 355, well, not the first, 355 out of the first 500, I should say. That's a better way to put that. So he is very much a big part on both sites as a key building block to this slate. You're not getting him at a discount. He's not a value play. He's one of the guys you're using the value plays to help you access.
Fair enough. Now, as far as value plays on the board, I imagine, and it's not just in this game, but unless you're relying on heavy minutes from Noel and just using that to push it, I would think Derrick Rose, healthy, a lot of minutes on the table. The matchup is there. And looking at it, 5,500 on DraftKings, and I get it, he's already over 50% owned, but to go from the obvious play with Julius Randle to the value play, I imagine that there may not be a higher or better name to run with across the board tonight, Terry, than Derrick Rose.
Yeah, I love the spot for Derrick Rose, honestly. I like the pricing that they rolled him out at. I think he's going to have a really good shot of scoring a good handful of points, kind of taking this game over, particularly if it's close in the fourth and they need him out there closing. this is what they brought Derrick Rose to New York to do, right? They want him to kind of take over, kind of run the team and be in the driver's seat in the playoffs, despite not being in the starting lineup. That's not what they've been doing with him. That's not what they've been using. So Elf Payton starts the game, does his thing out there for, 9 terrible minutes, and then Derrick Rose comes out and takes over, right? Derrick Rose is the point guard that you want from the Knicks. Just taking a look at the crunch there across 500 lineups on FanDuel, he came up in 40% of them, 199 of those lineups. So there are more choices at all the positions, particularly on FanDuel tonight. We talked about that last night where shooting guard was whittled down to like 3 guys, and it was just a rotation of those guys, and there just weren't other viable choices. Tonight, we've got a little bit more depth to work at each position. So you're not seeing as many guys spiking to huge numbers. You're getting a little bit more spread through the middle on some of these guys. So Rose is very, very much in play. I think I would be over the field on him. I think there's a significant opportunity for him to get over 30 minutes in this one. Tibbs is going to ride him, grind him into dust until they're knocked out of the playoffs.
How do we factor in probably the biggest piece of information that comes in tonight? And that's what was 8,800 for Donovan Mitchell is no longer a reality across the board. He's out tonight. So clearly there's going to be usage and there's going to be minutes aplenty. Is there a way now that maybe you, and I don't know if this factors back into what you were saying as far as with Rose and looking at a better value away from that game, because I don't know if it's just a matter of pivoting to Utah to make up for that minutes or that usage specifically, Terry, and maybe there is a better play to go back to that New York Atlanta game, but clearly the injury is a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. And look, we've got a decent sample over the last, 16, 18
Yes.
games at the end of the season. So we've got a decent sample. We know how this team plays without him. So a boost to Jordan Clarkson, a little boost to Joey Ingles, picks up some assist share in that situation, good distributor of the ball. So I think those guys get a little bit of a bump. I wasn't really planning on getting much out of Mitchell in this one anyway. Like, he wasn't really on the board to be rostered that much for me. I was expecting kind of shaved down minutes, not a great opportunity. Plus, when he was out there, he'd be just dogged by Dylan Brooks the whole game, who we saw, really doing a great job guarding Steph Curry the other day. So I just didn't really see a ton of upside to go to there. Now that story is going to be true for Jordan Clarkson as well. Now having to face Dylan Brooks, it's going to be true, maybe a little for a guy like Joe Ingles. So it's not like he's not going to be out there. He'll be out there playing his defense. It's just, I think those guys are priced appropriately they're going to be going up against that anyway, and they're not overly expensive, where you were paying too much for a Mitchell that I was questioning the minutes and the matchup. So I just kind of like paying less for that situation. Now these guys don't have to do nearly as much in that spot.
Archuleta L22 on the premium Slack. And again, another reminder every time we hit the premium Slack to be a part of the premium Slack community. And that's Awesemo Plus. It's $29.95 a week. And you have access to everything across the board, not just the NBA, but everything we do up there in the Awesemo and Awesemo Plus community. So Archuleta L22 asking Conley and Bullock or Ingles and Rose on a FanDuel late slate.
Ooh. Depends what you're doing with your money elsewhere, I think. But I might be inclined to lean Ingles and Rose. I'm a big believer in the Rose side of things, and I like the value that Ingles provides. Ingles not crazy popular. Rose is getting a lot of popularity. Ingles, the number might come up given the last hour here with the news and everything. He was low owned, 20% on FanDuel, very low owned at 6.8% on DK. I expect those are going to rise over the next 45 minutes or so, but I think I prefer that side of that one.
Well, you mentioned Jordan Clarkson as far as basically relation to not having Donovan Mitchell tonight, but I also wonder as far as just overall the confidence in Mike Conley, because that does go into the sample size. This isn't something brand new where Donovan Mitchell has been playing for the last 25, 30 games, and now all of a sudden we have to figure this thing out. I don't know how much you trust Mike Conley in general, not just specific to that question.
So I do. Conley's a guy who's built up enough trust for me as a basketball player, as a guy who I think is going to go out there, have a nice game tonight. DFS wise for us, I haven't won a ton with him. He's the guy who he's usually priced about Mike Conley kind of price. Like, I don't think there's anything special about getting to him at 7,200 here on FanDuel. I like the price better at 67 on DK. I wish he had some positional flex so you could move him around. I think he'd pick up a lot of flexibility, but you do have the util spot over there, so you can flex him around a little bit. So I think he's a better play on DK, but I think he's definitely going to be reliable to be Mike Conley out there. He's going to give you around his median projection of 30 and change points on either side. he does have a path to an upside game certainly here, but I think he's priced, around what his most likely outcome is going to be. We don't have him with a gigantic boom score probability looking at the boom bust tool. So I think he's very much in play, should be owned, but I don't know that I'd be aggressively pushing past the field with some other point guards that I like a little bit better on the slate.
And as far as just Clarkson individually, not just in relation to now, of course, with Donovan Mitchell, but the price there, and again, the difference, $500. So depending on how much people want to save that money, it might be somewhat of a cheaper pivot for Clarkson, but just overall, or pardon me, for Conley versus Clarkson, but just overall, the trust factor in Clarkson, again, this goes back to the body of work, the resume that we've seen with this team without Donovan Mitchell. So I don't know if it's just enough to trust one of these two guys to go off and give you a great return, as opposed to what is probably going to be more likely the case, I'm thinking, which is that they'll both make up for the absence, as we've seen them able to do over the past 16, 17 games.
Yeah, that's it. Everybody kind of contributes. Everybody's rates are a little bit boosted in this situation. Just taking a look since the trade deadline, which was March 25th, which grabs a little sample here of Mitchell being out, taking him off the court, 633 minutes for Clarkson. He becomes a 1.13 fantasy point per minute player. He's at 1.06 for the full season across all situations, 0.94 last year. So improved in general. And then he gets a little bit of a bump in this situation. Ingles lands at 0.86. So I believe that's, if I can jump over to Joey Ingles, that might be a little bit of a downtick or around where he normally is, but he gets an assist rate bump typically in this situation. He's 0.87. So that's his full season is 0.87. So like I said, right about what he normally is, but he's going to be out there and he's going to have a little bit more to do, a little bit more work, and the price isn't bad. On DK especially, you get him at that shooting guard and small forward flexible spot where you can move him around 5 different spots on your roster. It keeps him really, really optimal, really in play at that price. I think he's one of the better options from the mid-range. He's going to have a lot of work to do for this team tonight.
The matchup we know is going to be difficult for Trae Young, clearly, but he scores, and he's going to be in a position, no matter who's in front of him, to get buckets, and then that opens other things up for him. Ja Morant, I feel like just because it's Memphis, the narrative is that they've already lost this series, give up and move on. But you're looking at both, 8,500 for Young. It is a cheap slate overall, right? Nobody's even at 10K. Ja just underneath him at 8,300. So kind of a two-part way to look at this, Terry. First, if you are making a decision between one of the two, who would you favor more so? And then beyond having to make a decision, just looking at how many lineups you would project, how often you would have working both of them in.
Interesting. I think my preference probably on both sites. I'm just checking how it comes up in the crunch so that I can speak to what Alex's numbers will bring us. Yeah, it comes up about where I was expecting. Young is the preference by a decent degree on DraftKings. It's less stark on FanDuel, where we're getting to Ja about 30% of the time, Trae about 59% of the time in that 500 optimal lineup crunch. No randomness on that. And then switching over to DK, you get Trae about 47% of the time, about half the lineups, but then Ja only comes up like 2% of the time. 10 lineups out of 500 ended up with Ja over there. So on the DK side of things, our numbers, just plugging him into Fantasy Cruncher with no tweaks, are coming up significantly favoring the Trae side of that one. I think I agree in general. It wouldn't be that aggressive, I don't think, in terms of which one of these guys I expect to succeed. There's definitely a path for both of them to have a good game. And if Memphis is going to stay in this series, it's got to go through Ja for the most part. So he's going to have to step up. We saw him have a great game the other day. So I think it's definitely in there. We've seen him, succeed significantly since coming into the league. 40-minute projection on him basically for 8,200, 8,300. I think he's a great spot on both sites. I just think there's more upside for Trae to score less. The Knicks are a good defensive team, but just the way that Trae scores the ball, and I just give Utah. I guess I believe in Utah's defense a little bit more, even against my own Knicks. It's just so new for the Knicks to be good at anything. Maybe that I'm a little bit biased on that one, but yeah, I would say there's a better shot in my book for Trae to light it up against my Knicks here.
Hey, you can argue some of the best defense for Carmelo Anthony's career came when he was a New York Knick. So Something changes. Maybe there's something in the air with you wearing the Melo jersey tonight, and it could transfer.
We're going to Carmelo Anthony's defense as a point to support one of our arguments. I think we're in trouble.
I was saying that in my head, and you're just a little sharper and quicker than me that you jumped in, because I was just about to catch myself thinking the same exact thing. Yeah, there's got to be somebody better to use overall by all means. But let's look at this, though, because Atlanta is a tough spot. I think I'm with you, man, and I'm not a Knicks homer by any means. My Sixers push the 7-point spread. The gate closed at 8, so Washington covers earlier. And I know people on the stream are upset with Embiid because he didn't drop 40 in 29 minutes. Instead, it was 30. I understand all of that frustration. So this comes from a non-homer or honk standpoint. But, I mean, my confidence in the Knicks to win this series and win tonight is through the roof. But I also recognize the difference where you can find value in guys who can put up points and score in DFS, not just as far as buckets are concerned. So Capella and Bogdan are going to be the obvious ones to talk about tonight outside of Trae Young. And even before we look at maybe a fourth name, I don't even know how to approach either of those two guys based on the belief, as we said, that New York is going to do a lot to blanket this team.
Yeah, and look, we saw Capella just recently had recently in the last few months, had a pretty big game against these Knicks. So it's certainly there for him. He was coming up a fair amount of the time on the FanDuel slate, I think it was. Let me pull that up. Yeah, he came up as the second most optimal center behind Rudy Gobert. Actually, it wasn't all that frequent. Rudy kind of crushed through most of the ownership at the singular center spot on FanDuel in this latest version. The one I ran earlier, it was a little bit less stark that way. We were getting to a little bit more Capella, and we were getting to a good amount of Noel. Where'd that come from? Nerlens Noel.
Christmas, right?
I think I just pronounced it 3 different ways, but that's
yes,
fine.
You did.
Wow. My brain is... Woo.
Here's the good thing. One of the 3 was correct, so we're good.
Yeah, at least we got one, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, a lot more of it's going toward Rudy Gobert now, but I think Clint Capella is definitely in play. There is an easy path for him to put up a good game here. The Knicks are going to be cracking down on him with both Nerlens and Taj Gibson. I don't think they're going to be throwing Obi Toppin into the fire. I think most of those minutes are going to go to Taj. I heard people earlier in the day talking about, where the minutes going to come from for Taj. That's where they're going to come from. That's another guy who he's on this team for a very specific reason, and it's so that Tibbs can throw minutes at him and have him do his dirty, grindy things out on the court during the playoffs. So this is why Taj is here. He's been getting minutes throughout, and I think it definitely has a spot to go up. So they could limit Clint Capella here, but he's a good enough player that, throw in the blocks, throw in the rebounding. There's plenty of ways that he can score fantasy points for us without even necessarily having to score the basketball. Bogdan on the other side, I think he's a guy that perhaps the Knicks could lock down a little bit more. He's been playing great, but there's more that the Knicks can throw at him. Right. Gunning out there and locking down on 3-point shots, getting out there and just stopping him from the perimeter and from the floor. I just think the way that he gets his points, his field goals, there's just more that the Knicks can do. And then he does less in terms of the peripheral stats. So I think there's a bigger narrative for him to get a little bit shut down tonight. I'm not saying it's definitely a lock to happen. I still like him. I think he's fairly priced and somebody we should definitely be considering. But if I was picking between the two, I think I would have to lean Capella in that argument.
We did see just a comment, more of a question, pardon me, on the chat regarding 3 of the 4 guys that we talked about. And this can open up the conversation of a fourth, specifically regarding playing him, not in reference, as you mentioned, Rudy Gobert, so high owned, especially when in the FanDuel single center slot. So I saw Emily ask on the chat, Morant and Capella or Young and Gobert, and that kind of pits both the backcourt, as we've talked about, but now Capella up against Gobert, who's super heavy owned. And just on the surface of it, you kind of have to love that matchup against him and Valanciunas.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a good reason that Rudy Gobert is coming up that significantly owned, where we're only getting 1 center. I love the idea that he's cheaper over on DK, maybe about the same considering we're talking about a lower relative cap, but he just looks like the best option on both sites. So being able to build in some of those other power forward center options next to him on that site, you can roll out Rudy Gobert and Nerlens Noel together. At Noel at 4,100 is easy to just plug into that util spot, put Rudy Gobert at the center. You're off and running with the 2 best center plays, in my opinion, that are most likely to see a ton of upside. At that price, Noel's going to get 30 minutes in this game, in my opinion. We've got him projected at 26. I think we're a little bit low. I think he's going to be out there for a significant run. I just don't see them throwing any minutes toward Obi Toppin. It's going to be a spot where Tibbs tightens this rotation up. We're going to see a ton of Reggie Bullock. We're going to see a ton of RJ Barrett. Julius Randle is going to be on the court for the game's only 48 minutes long. Julius Randle might see 56. I mean, that's how Tibbs loves to play this guy, right? So it's just going to be a tight rotation for these Knicks. So I think there's good narrative there about putting, using Gobert and then putting these other guys around him.
We in Philly, we just called them Nerlens, and it made it easy because Brett Brown, in the thickest of thick Boston accents, called him Nerlens. So he was just Nerlens to everybody. And just, I don't know, that's how I always refer to him now too. So it's the easiest way moving forward. But how about Barrett? I mean, again, it's not just going to be Julius Randle and Derrick Rose clearly on the opposite end of that as far as the ultra value play. But I can't imagine that there's any buyer's remorse with the price tag associated to Barrett in both DraftKings and FanDuel, with the expectation and already, I think, safe assumption that Barrett's out there, as you said, for a lot of minutes tonight.
Yeah, for sure. This kid needs to score for them. He needs to do a lot out on the court for them to succeed tonight, and then to succeed and move on in this series. Had a great season. A kid that we were already panicking about, our third overall pick. Kind of had a clunky year his freshman year here, but had a great sophomore year rounding it up. Shot over 40% from three this season. Just excellent turnaround for him. So really excited to see what he does, in the playoffs now, getting him averaged 34.9 minutes per game over the course of the season. Like I said, shot 40.1% from three. Nice little rebounding. He boosted that a little bit from last season. I'd like to see him become a better distributor of the basketball, but we got a lot of that out of Julius Randle in the front court this year, so he didn't really have to. Like, Randle's playing the front court, distributing the ball, picking up 6 assists a game, a massive assist share for him. It did enough that Barrett didn't have to focus on that. I think it's there for the kid. So he's very, very talented across the board, can score in a few different ways for us for fantasy purposes, but I think primarily we need him to actually score the basketball, both for the Knicks to succeed and for him to be successful for DFS purposes today.
Jets World on the premium Slack asking about Peyton starting, and just to kind of circle back, you did reference this as far as why you were in such favor of running Rose, and even the joke about even if Peyton's out there for a cup of coffee, that probably won't even get cold by the time he gets pulled.
Yeah, look, there's a reason that Elf is the minimum on FanDuel. He's 3,100 on DK. He's just not good, right? And I know that Knicks fans wanted something from him, but he just has not been able to deliver, as most of the point guards who come through here over the last 2 decades haven't been. He's just right in that bucket. So yeah, I don't really want any part of him on the court at all. As a Knicks fan, we've got him projected for 14 minutes tonight. If he sees more than that, the Knicks are probably in trouble, or they're just cruising. I don't see a narrative where Elf Payton's out there on the floor at all in the fourth quarter of a close game. Those are Derrick Rose minutes. And those are going to be Alec Burks minutes. Those are going to be Reggie Bullock minutes. He would be the 6th or 7th choice for that spot. So, I mean, there's just not much narrative for him to crack that 14-minute mark. We see very little upside there. For a couple of shares across 150 lineups at the minimum, I can argue for anybody who's going to see more than 12 minutes on a slate like this. There's only 2 games, so many guys to choose from. He's just one of the more limited options even in that pool. So it's just not for me.
All right, we've got about 31 minutes. Wow. That's worse than the Noel mispronunciation. It's my basic math blunder right there. So we've got 31 minutes just under until we lock tonight. And yes, you can use the big board as far as the Awesemo Plus premium tool for you, but even more so, and this is why we just keep giving back and keep asking. All we ask from you is that you smash the like button. Really, that's it. And you subscribe, you hit the notification bell, and you're going to be privy to a lot of stuff that we do, like this flash sale that we're running tonight. I don't know if you caught this. Now, for 55,000 subs, that's what we have, and we're celebrating it, giving it back to everybody out there. So all you need to do is request a follow at Awesemo Odds, and then click the link in the pinned tweet. It's right there, right at the top. Click that link, pinned tweet, and you'll get a promo code. You don't need to, you're not entered into anything. You're not in the running for anything. You just click that link and you'll get a promo code, and that gives you a free week of our NBA Express package that includes everything from player rankings, ownership rankings, the lineup builder, the big board, which is available to you today. So take advantage of this because, look, you can get on this thing and use it to your advantage as we continue to talk until the rest of the show. So you don't have to wait. There's nothing like that. You can jump in right now, take advantage of it. Again, request a follow at Awesemo Odds, and then just click on that pinned tweet and you'll get that promo code free week of NBA Express. I'm curious, man, just looking at tonight, what are you more confident in? Is it the Knicks? And look, this thing has been bet. I don't know how, because the public was all over New York. And then it looks like a sharp play came in right at the end earlier this afternoon and shifted that line through 0 to now where the Hawks are favored by a half point or a full point, depending on where you look at it. Some places a money line play. So are you more confident that the Knicks can cover a 3.5 point home spread, or because you know it's coming, when you give out your top birthday scene in a movie, willing and ready to fight off all the people coming on the stream at you, like, no, you missed this movie, and no, how could you miss this one? So what are you more comfortable and confident in tonight?
I am very comfortable that my Knickerbockers are going to win that game and cover, no problem at all. This is a just absolute smash spot for the Knicksons as far as betting goes. And then I'm pretty confident that the internet's going to come at us in terms of that's just what the internet does when you talk about these sort of things. But hey, I covered my ground, man. There's like 40 movies on there, right? I went a little nuts. This was added to from when I tweeted it out last night, but I whittled it down to our actual top 10. So I can get into the top, like maybe we do the bottom 5. 10
yeah, that's what I think. Like, I think we could sprinkle. I mean, it almost like, both of us, we can maneuver throughout the show and we can seamlessly go from Jonas Valanciunas to number 10 to back to Randle and where he is on the slate to number 9. So I think we could work this in to where it doesn't take over, and nor do we neglect.
I like it. And our producer just got back from grabbing his chicken delivery at the door, so he has no idea what we're talking about. So we're all good to do whatever we want now.
Perfect. That was great timing by us, and I don't even think we planned that, or at least I didn't plan that by any means. What's number 10? And again, this all happened yesterday as I was trolled heavily about the birthday that wasn't, right? I even had Tom at the end of the show hit me on Slack saying, hey, happy birthday, Eytan. And I thought he was trolling me too, and it was all a big thing. So we were having fun with it. And right at the end, because I knew I couldn't resist, because Terry couldn't resist it was asked this question: what is the most famous, or the best, if you will, movie with a birthday scene or birthday scene in a movie? And that just completely derailed Terry's night.
It did. I spent a good amount of the time. I mean, I was watching games, I had everything going on, but this was just noodling through my brain. So at number 10, some of these there were just too many options, right, that are very similar kinds of things. So one of the common themes that we see a lot is a birthday party being like the table setter for the big plot jumping off point. So we got that coming in at number 10. We've got the table setter for tentpole movies with Lord of the Rings with Bilbo's birthday, Harry Potter with his birthday, The Game with Michael Douglas, a fantastic movie, was a great birthday scene. And then 16 Candles I kind of threw in there because it's just the whole thing is the birthday. So I just kind of had to edge that in somewhere. I didn't want to put it in with kids' parties that we'll get to later, so I thought that was a good spot for it. So
I wonder,
setters is 10.
Okay, because I was going to say that could even be an honorable mention, but I know that you spent way too much time on this. That's like coming to a restaurant and saying, I'd like that meal, but can you just take the fennel off? And the cook is like, the chef, are you kidding me? So I don't want to mess with your process by any means. All right, real quick, can you sneak 9 in there? Because now you really have me tempted.
Absolutely. We've got a ton of kids parties in different movies, right? So There are pure kids parties that are just kids parties having fun. So in that list, I threw in Ghostbusters 2 and I threw in Mrs. Doubtfire. They're both kind of just in the beginning of the movie having fun. Mrs. Doubtfire is a little bit of a table setter, but he gets up on the table. I think there's a goat in there. Ghostbusters 2, they're busted down to doing kids parties. They're not the Ghostbusters anymore. So those were 2 that jumped out at me.
I have to know. You don't have to tell me if it is what number it is. But speaking of kids parties and it not really being a kids party, the first movie I think of is Happy Gilmore. Not Happy Gilmore. Billy Madison. Sorry.
Billy Madison's actually, that's the birthday scene. I was just thinking Happy Gilmore is just a good movie.
No, I know. I messed up the 2 right there. But it's like, every time he graduates, there's a birthday.
Right. That didn't make my list, but that's actually
okay. No, I'm just curious.
Yeah, but we do have the other kids' parties were Uncle Buck, Parenthood, and Easy Money with me taking the pictures of the kids. Plus, Old School is in there as potentially being used later on, though, depending on how number 3 comes out.
I love it. I love it. Hey, let's look at another name that has kind of been thrown around again in comparison, but I don't necessarily know how much confidence you have. And again, this is where I think the NBA matchup and maybe even a betting standpoint as far as an individual prop play and no house advantage, of course, is going to be the place to go for all of that. And we'll tell you some more in depth about that before we get out of here. But to look at a prop play and the NBA matchup, just anticipating a little different from what you would get from a DFS return. So normally I would say, oh yeah, Jonas Valanciunas, I would fade him. He's been able to get over on some better matchups as of recent. And Rudy Gobert is a major slap in the face of reality. But I also can recognize that there are some areas where Valanciunas can be a good play on DFS slates tonight. Are you looking at him, when you think, with a lot of exposure in some lineups?
So I think he's going to be out there to a degree, but I mentioned how much Rudy was coming up in terms of the optimals that I was running off the top here. And Jovel's the one who is the most suppressed out of the other center options. He's just not coming up very much at all. I do think there's a path for him to grab a bunch of rebounds, throw up a couple block shots, and do his thing out there. For the money, though, I just don't know how much upside we're getting out of him here. Like, it's just the way that the slate's priced. I'd almost rather get to Clint Capella for a little bit less on FanDuel. Looking at Clint Capella with a pretty decent margin, $600, you can do a decent amount with that on this slate. So I just don't know that that this is the spot to really roll him out all that aggressively, Jovel. Like I said, he could certainly grab some boards. He could certainly block some shots and get to where we need him to be. He was a 43.2% rebounding share for the entire season this year. So, I mean, he's excellent in that capacity. But like you said, he's going up against Rudy Gobert. They're going up against a very good grindy team. And it's not like it's going to be a high-paced game. We're expecting a ton of field goal attempts where you're getting a bunch of missed shots. It's going to be a tight, pretty slow-paced game. So it's tough. It's a tough road to hoe for him.
Is there anybody, as we start to look, and maybe it's a guy like Alec Burks, if you can start to find some value, and I'll appeal back to you and your squad first and foremost, but we start to look at and I'll use DraftKings as the barometer here, but we can use FanDuel for a different number as well. But if we start to look in that sub 5K, maybe 4,500 range and below, are there names, especially, again, with the Knicks, because I think that would probably be the better place to start than the Hawks, where we were even struggling past 3 to find significant value. But I wonder at that point where we can look at guys, and Burks is maybe the best place to start. You did mention Noel, Nerlens a bunch, and just running up front. But even elsewhere, outside of Noel and outside of up front, is there an area 4,500 or maybe below where you are comfortable running somebody or maybe a couple of guys on the Knicks?
Yeah, so just taking a look, I think there's a path for Burks to get those significant minutes. I just think it's more likely that we're going to see Reggie Bullock get a lot of them. Yeah. So depending on, I'm just looking for him on the price board for DK, 49 for Reggie. So he qualifies under 5K.
Yes.
Shooting guard and small forward. He had a nice year quietly, just doing exactly what the Knicks wanted him to do. Come in there, be a good 3-and-D kind of a guy. And that's what he does. He doesn't torch other teams for significant upside in terms of his scoring, but he can go off on any given night and make a few threes. And for DFS purposes, when you know you're going to get a guy like that for 30 some odd minutes for GPP play, that's a valuable guy. That's a guy with a broad range of outcomes. He's only overall for the course of the season a 0.65 fantasy point per minute player, but that's what he's priced like. It's not like he's priced up in the 6,500 range, the 7,500 range. He's at 4,800 on FanDuel, 49 on DK with multi-position eligibility on DK. There's a lot of value in that. So I like Reggie Bullock there, but I do think, in terms of minutes, you could easily see some of those minutes that we've got for him, and then some of the backup point guard minutes shift over to Alec Burks. So Alec Burks could go from the 18 minutes that we've got projected for him, which I think is most likely accurate and most likely what he's going to get to, he's got upside toward 26 minutes, 24 minutes, and he could definitely do some damage at these prices. We've seen him go on and light it up in the fourth quarter in a couple of games. So I definitely think there's a good path for him to be out there for closing minutes, and there's a good path for him to be out there in a tight game, and he's got upside. So definitely Burks is in play.
I'm just curious, kind of looking at what we have in front of us and knowing that it's not going to be the first or only time that we'll have short slates in the postseason to work with, but I don't know how often you get overall what appears to be a cheaper slate. So applying that where Julius Randle, again, DraftKings is going to be the top guy at 9,200. How much do you really find yourself pushing for value, especially because it is the playoffs? Lineups, rotations get shorter, and you don't necessarily have to pay 10-5 or 12, whatever it may be for Westbrook on this slate tonight. So while we are and continue to take questions on the super chat and the premium Slack about value plays and looking at guys like a Royce O'Neal, for example, who's 38% owned on DraftKings, I just wonder how often you have to get, if it's not one, but multiple guys on this specific slate tonight, Terry, just because of how cheap it appears overall.
So and that's a great question. I do think it is important to still value the value guys, to put it clunkily, right?
Yes.
We still do want to be getting to some of these $4,000 types, like a Royce O'Neal is probably a decent guy to consider on both sites. He's going to be popular on both sites, but he's cheap and he's going to have value and utility. Moving in between both forward spots on DK is going to give you additional value. Guys like that, guys like we just talked about with the Knicks, some of the other guys at low prices, they're going to have value still because, yeah, you're not paying up to any of these extreme superstars. You're not getting Giannis for 11,000 to your point on this slate. But what you are able to do with that salary then is spread it out and get to a few of the mid-range guys, a few of the upper mid-range guys. So that's how you access multiple guys at positions. Instead of paying up for one guy at one spot, you're able to pay to three guys at three spots. Instead of rostering a, let's say, Jordan Clarkson for 69, maybe you've got the money to get to Trey for 87. These are the decisions that you're able to make. Yeah, nobody's priced through the roof, so you can put these lineups together. What it should lead to is a lot of ability as compared to last night to put together more unique lineups. There are just more options. Like I said at the top of the show, there's just more options looking at the board at each position where you can kind of flex things around a little bit better and get to different builds. They're all going to be very chalky. They're all going to be extremely highly owned. It's going to be difficult to build something totally unique tonight, but there are at least more chances toward doing that where you're not taking extreme dart throws of these guys that are, 3,500 but projected for 8 minutes or whatever. And that was kind of the case with some of the values last night. So it's a different kind of a slate. I think it's really interesting. I actually prefer this kind of a slate.
Yeah, and I guess that would be an easy follow-up is it probably makes it, even if there's just one or two guys that are heavy priced where you're making a decision between two guys on a DraftKings lineup, let's say a similar position, or if you don't have to make it like that in FanDuel, you're still looking at spending 10-5 for one guy, 11-8 for another guy. I just imagine not having even a couple of guys higher priced than a Julius Randle, let's say, on this slate makes it easier, even if it's just a little bit of an edge.
Sure. And what we need to consider when it becomes like that, though, of course, is, all right, if it is that easy, now we've got all the hand builders out there in the world, all the people just tossing $5 in or, three lineups, whatever the case is, who aren't building, with optimizers and thinking and watching the shows and absorbing all the content and everything that we've got at the site. So yeah, there are easier paths and lineups come together more easily, but now you're also feeding into that same, those are the obvious clicks that people are making as they're sitting on their phone on the bus, making their lineups. Those are the names that they're going to, and those are the names that they're going to want to go to. They're the names they know. They're not the Desmond Bains of the world, right? Those are the guys, those are the sneaky guys. So you do, to a degree, want to get into the game theory and the thinking it through of it. And you can do that with a 2-game slate where it's a little bit of a case where, something weird and low owned and 20-ish minutes kind of a projection guy could certainly go up. We saw it last night with Melo. Melo was a good example. We kind of didn't totally poo-poo it, and he wasn't exactly low owned, but a guy like that is somebody who could, angle his way into a valuable, productive game. And those are the guys you kind of want to hunt for rather than necessarily just the most obvious names off the top. I think somebody interesting for tonight for that regard is potentially Danilo Gallinari. We've got him projected for 25 minutes in the rotation. Solid basketball player if you catch him on the right night, a guy who can make some threes, a guy who can sink some field goals, doesn't do a hell of a lot of other things on the court. You get the fun revenge narrative. I'm not really trying to sell that to anybody, but 0.92 fantasy point per minute guy in the 4,000s on both sites. There's utility there. There's upside there. So I'd be hunting for guys like that. Kevin Huerter, similar kind of a play, 4,200, 4,700 with the multi-position between guard and forward on DK. So just different guys that you can move around, particularly on DK when you're getting the multi-position. I just think it makes sense to, if your first click on a guy is at position X, but he's got eligibility at position Y where people don't necessarily think of him. Move him from the first one to the second one. Put him at position Y in your first build and see what happens with that build, because it's not the first thing that everybody's going to do with that guy. I just think it makes sense to approach a slate from that perspective.
Does Royce O'Neal fit into that mold of a guy that you could roster 2 different slots tonight? And also you start to see the ownership piling in, probably be about 40%, maybe even by the time we get done here. But at 4,300 on DraftKings, we have him really high as far as the ownership projections are concerned on the night slate. I wonder if that is a guy who does fit into that similar mold that you just laid out, especially because he can be flexible on the roster spot, and he's also not a ton of money at all.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's in play. We've got him projected around 30 minutes. Let me find, 32-minute projection for him, which I totally agree with. It makes a ton of sense that he's going to be out there for, full starters run. 0.68 fantasy point per minute player for the season. So the 4,300, the 4,000, not extreme discounts by any means, but he's got a decent little boom score probability on our boom bust tool coming up in the optimal lineup a fair amount of the time. He's just going to be owned. You're not snaking him past anybody. So it's not like you're going to a Xavier Tillman and playing for the fouls narrative and hoping that Xavier Tillman cracks from 12 minutes into the 20s somewhere where he would instantly gain value at those prices. It's not like that kind of a play with Royce O'Neal. O'Neal's on the board for everybody, but I definitely think he's on the board. I think he needs to be mixed in at least some of these lineups.
All right, we're going to get to number 8 coming up. But before that, look, we've got 13 minutes now before everything locks up. So just to remind you of this awesome sale that we have, it's a flash sale to celebrate 55,000 subscribers. I don't want to short anything, 55K. So to give back to you beyond, again, reminding, asking, demanding that you smash the like away and that notification bell, especially for the live before lock type shows leading you up to slates locking, just request to follow at Awesemo Odds. You should already be following. If not, at Awesemo Odds, and then click that link. It's a pinned tweet right there on the link, and you're going to get a promo code for a free week of our NBA Express package. And again, there's time still to sign up. You can still have us. You can open up a second window and keep us on there. Listen to Terry's number 8 movie, the best movie with a birthday scene, and sign up and still come back and use everything available to you while listening to the end of the show. I know I'm asking a lot, Terry, for people on the stream to multitask, but I've been reading a bunch of comments. They look like people that are capable of multitasking.
Definitely. I think these guys can do it. If anybody out there can do it, it's our audience. These other DFS sites in the world, come on. We don't want to bet on those pinheads, but our audience, please. These guys got it. No problem.
There you go. Jump in now. 55 passes available to celebrate the 55,000 subs. What is number 8? And I was, by the way, just looking selfishly to see if that link to how you can make those Uncle Buck pancakes is still live. But what is number 8 now on the Terry McBride list of famous birthdays at a movie?
So number 8 continues the theme of kids parties. It's the second kind of kids party that we get. It's a kids party where the adults are on drugs. And I thought of 2 good examples of that one, Knocked Up and a movie called Sleeping with Other People with Jason Sudeikis, which is kind of an offbeat romantic comedy type movie, but one of those romantic comedies that like is enjoyable. It's not like the silly Kate Hudson meets Matthew McConaughey type one. It's actually smart, funny. Jason Mantzoukas is in it. A bunch of good people in it. So that was a funny scene. And then I think I can take us quickly through 6 and 7 if you want to do it. They're both single entry ones.
I love how you have a theme to this, though, and you've end around it having actually 10 movies, and you're like, no. Number 8 is really a theme, and then it's like the sub of 3 or 4 movies. Genius.
You cracked my code for how to do lists on the internet.
I love it. Genius.
How to avoid criticism.
Yes.
Number 7 coming in. Continuing, it's actually also a kids party, but it's a singular entry. It's Signs, the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah.
It's the alien reveal, the big reveal, the first time you see the alien.
Yes.
On a news feed of a kids party from Brazil. And
Brazil, yep.
Out. It's a big kind of a moment.
I still get
in at number 7.
By the way, and there are 2 scenes in that movie, Philly's own M. Night, that I still, even talking about it, I have that feeling. What do you call it? Like that prickly feeling, right? Yeah. One of them is the corn scene, like the corn stalk scene. And that was amazing. I mean, M. Night has a lot of issues in his filmmaking. I get it. I'm not here to champion him, but that was one of the most memorable scenes in a movie, just how it was shot and presented. And the other is that, but it's just that small little snippet of the kids yelling and pointing in the birthday party at that alien walking, because it's the only time outside of when he catches it in the bathroom, right? It's the only time that you ever see the alien in the movie.
Right. And that's the first reveal, the first time all right, this is real. This is actually happening. Because it's midnight. You're thinking like maybe it's a conspiracy, everybody's wrong. Maybe it's the trees killing everybody and that kind of a thing. So moving us on real quick, though, so we can continue talking about the slate. But coming in at number 6, moving from kids' parties to a very adult-themed party, we've got Under Siege, the birthday party at the beginning for the captain of the ship. The scene where Eric Laniak comes up out of the cake. Man. I don't know. I'm sure you remember
Beautiful.
Baywatch back in the day. Most
beautiful.
Probably doesn't, but ooh, man, that was
not only was she beautiful, and I imagine, right, still is, but that is an amazing shout right there. I did not think Under Siege would be it. Right, Tommy Lee Jones, the band, yes. Before you realize what's going on, and Steven Seagal has to save the day as the chef.
That's right, man.
Oh man, that is awesome. What a shout. All right. Real quick, as we're winding down, and what do we have now? 5 left, right? Top 5?
Yep, we got the top 5.
Okay. We'll get to that, I promise. It doesn't seem like there was anybody at least high cost, and I don't know, maybe there's Dylan Brooks or Kyle Anderson that jump out at you. You did mention Gallinari and Bullock as far as guys that you can see getting to. Is there anybody really that's been a hard fade tonight that's been – and not Melo, because we did not do that for all of you who are watching. We did not fade Melo last night. I'm sorry. But is there anybody really that we've missed or that we've kind of danced around that is enough of a cost where you would say, hard fade, I can't get to that player?
No, I think the way this one's priced out and just the way that a lot of these lineups come together, coming back to the point of, I think just that we have a lot to work with in terms of putting together guys from the mid-range and getting to a bunch of them with a couple of these value guys. So just looking through, dashed off 500 optimal lineups, like I said, on both sites, they're all spending a good amount of the money. They're locking up all the positions, and they're using most of the guys we've talked about that are the regular rotation pieces, the guys who are reliable for minutes in this spot, which is really what we want to be hunting for. Yeah, you need to throw a couple of darts, but if we're talking about who am I going to look to hard fade, if I was able to enter a 500 lineups slate, maybe I go in here and I trim the 6 Elf Payton lineups that popped in here and like the Tyus Jones lineup. I would probably look to maybe grab a couple of those and maybe rerun them for something better. But I would certainly run like the 16 DeAnthony Melton lineups that popped into this one. There's a bunch of Desmond Baines in here. I think there's enough narrative for some of these guys to get some minutes. I would probably trim this Obi Toppin off the bottom here. So, I would look at a slate like that. If you're entering 150, just start trimming maybe the bottom. I might throw a couple of additional shares in that kind of a scenario toward a guy like Xavier Tillman, who I think there's at least a scenario where he gets a decent amount of minutes and gets some run, whether his teammates get into foul trouble or not. He's a productive enough kid when he's on the court that I don't see them just saying, hey, get out there and play some minutes. But I don't necessarily think that he's totally off the board for just getting minutes, particularly if it's not a very close game as it gets late. He might just see some bonus time toward the end of the game. So there's upside for guys like that, and there's significant downside for the guys that are somewhat obvious, just the guys who aren't going to play. You probably don't want to be playing them.
You have successfully transformed the stream from Bullock or Burks to Nicole Eggert or Yasmin Bleeth. All because of your Baywatch reference. You know that, right?
That'll do it. I come down on the Nicole Eggert side of that one. I'm a sucker for blondes.
Yeah, and the younger Nicole Eggert, because I was a much younger kid, so she was like an older crush for me on Charles in Charge. Remember that show?
Sure.
So that's the reason why I'd watch. Trust me, it wasn't Willie Ames. I can promise you that. It was Nicole Eggert bringing me to that. Just a quick update here on ownership projections. Again, Awesemo Plus, the free tool for you today on the NBA content, or what we had yesterday, sorry, is the big board. More of that free content coming your way on Monday. But just looking at this real quick, and then we do have 5 to get to before we get out of here. The Awesemo Hall of Fame we'll mention in a second, but I just wanted to update because it looks like both Derrick Rose and Nerlens Noel are 2 of the 3 highest owned, with Rudy Gobert in the middle there as far as on DraftKings, with Derrick Rose at 65% owned right now heading into the slate tonight. Not really a shock, I would imagine, Terry.
No, not really. And that's actually right about where he came in that DraftKings crunch that I ran. I had him at 63%. So So that's like right on target for what's coming up in terms of how frequently you're getting him in these optimal lineups or these projected optimal lineups. Across 500, that's a pretty big sample of what the likely lineups, the likely ones to get entered are. So this wouldn't be the slate of entries that I would put in. If I saw that kind of a number and that kind of a result, though, that's a decision point. Do we want to try and push above that, or do we not believe in the Derrick Rose projection? Maybe we see a narrative where Derrick Rose doesn't get those minutes and we want to undercut the field. For me, that's an over. I want to be over the field on that mark, even an aggressive mark like that. I just think he's one of the fundamental building blocks for the slate. And I think it's true about Nerlens Noel, and I think it's true about Rudy Gobert. Gobert, in particular, both sites was coming up as one of the most optimal plays. And I would put Julius Randle right next to him in that conversation. In most lineups, those two guys would be probably my first two clicks.
Wow, EMAC with a shout right there on the stream, blown away. That might be one of Nicole Eggert's best pieces of work. And you have both Feldman and Haim in the Corys.
Well done, guys. I was going to actually throw that in as a bonus for you. I was going to say, if you like Nicole Eggert, I got a movie for you.
Yes, that is amazing.
That's a good one. Yep.
All right, before
blown away with Tommy Lee Jones and who was that? Jeff Bridges. Not that one.
No, not that blown away, which was a ripoff of Volcano, right? I forget which came first.
No, that's Dante's Peak.
Oh, Dante's Peak. Yes, thank you.
This was the Irish bomber in
got it. That's right. Tommy Lee Jones in one of his 2 or 3 typecast roles. Perfect for it, by all means. Before we get to that 5, because now you have everybody, wait, who knows what reference is going to come from an 80s sitcom or a late 90s movie with the final 5 here. We basically want to give you a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. This is what it's all about with the Awesemo Hall of Fame. Yes, we like to go through the list of all of the great big wins, courtesy of what you can find up here, all the tools and the analysts like Terry, the insight that you get. But the reality is that if you can, just download the Awesemo profile pick like you haven't already, awesemo.com/avatar, place in a top 3 contest with over 5,000 contestants. Not difficult by any means. Tweet us your wins, as you have been doing, at Awesemo HOF, and you'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. That's really what this comes down to. Yes, we want to give you a place to brag and stick your chest out, but the reality is we want to give something back. We want to give something back. Hit the like button, hit the notification bell, subscribe, but most importantly, download the profile pick and you can win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Okay, and there you have it. I mean, it's amazing just to see these gigantic victories. One day, my friend, it will be me, and I guarantee you I will never shut up. It could be 5,000 and I will never show up. What's number 5 for you?
Number 5, one that we didn't think of off the top, famous 80s movie, I'm sure near and dear to your heart like it is mine, The Karate Kid with Mr. Miyagi singing him happy birthday and then giving him a car, right? That's a classic 80s movie. Has kind of come back to life with Cobra Kai these days. I don't know if you're watching that show, but man, that's a lot of fun if you like The Karate Kid.
I am not up on it yet, but I'll take your recommendation for it. I still have a couple of Mayor from Easttowns, or wherever from Easttown. Yes, I'll do it.
I'm going to check that one out.
It's not bad, not bad. But I like that. Another sneak play there that I wouldn't think of. You're really mining value across the board from the 2-game slate tonight and the movies. I love it. All right, what's 4?
Got it. Number 4 coming in via suggestion from our own Blaine, The Birds. Definitely one I had forgotten when I did the original scratch list here, the brainstorm, but that's a biggie. That was definitely a key one. Big scene in that movie. So killer scene. Hitchcock the master. So number 4 is The Birds. Want to go into the conversation that we're going to have at number 3?
Yes.
One of the internet's favorite conversations, as we talked about before the show, is whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
It is, right?
We both agree. Yeah, I think Die Hard qualifies as a Christmas movie. I'm always willing to throw that in. I think that's our general accepted public analysis of that now. But then if we're considering Die Hard a Christmas movie, well, that technically also makes it a birthday movie. So coming in at number 3, if we're agreed that it's a Christmas movie, it's got to also be counted as a birthday movie. I put it next to another movie with a great birthday scene for Jesus's birthday, which is Full Metal Jacket. So those two tie for me at number 3.
Yes.
Creating the birth of Jesus Christ on Christmas Day. Number 3, Die Hard and Full Metal Jacket.
I love it. Again, the way in which you work the angle, my friend, like a pool sharp out there. It's awesome to see. And yeah, if you open up the door for Die Hard, which I'm no problem at all, kicking that door open, Full Metal Jacket, I feel like you're right. That has to be side by side with that another memorable scene in there. EMAC is through the roof thrilled that you put it in there, by the way.
Absolutely. I saw him spoil it right before we got there. Yeah, that was pretty Mac. But yeah, that's just a killer scene in a phenomenal movie. One of the more famous, better first half than second half movies of all time, probably.
Sure.
An excellent flick overall. Number
yeah,
two is
it is two separate movies. You're right, but
yeah, very much.
The first part of it is just epic. I mean, it truly is epic.
Yeah, absolutely. Number two, I stole from you from yesterday. It was a great suggestion. At the very end of Godfather 2, the little flashback tag that they do, that's technically a birthday party. So
yes, it is.
People, right?
Don's birthday.
He introduces Carlo to everybody for the first time. Mikey's sitting there before he goes off to the army. They talk about him signing up. Just a killer scene. All three of those have been on this past month on, I think, Showtime. And they were showing them 3 in a row. Say again?
Do you watch 3 or do you just act like it doesn't happen? I know there's some famous people in it, but I didn't know if you watched 3.
I had not seen 3 in years and years and years. I was in the write it off category, right? But they just, Coppola released the recut of it, the Michael Corleone coda that they're calling it now, which I'm 100% sure is going to now lead to Godfather 4 at some point. We're going to get.
Oh, there you go.
But I think it does make a slight improvement. The only problem is you cannot remove Sofia Coppola from that movie, and she's what kills it for me. She's a phenomenal director. I think she's done great things, but she's just epically bad in that movie. It was supposed to be Winona Ryder, and she had to bail at the last minute. So Coppola got his own daughter in there, and it did not go well like nepotism usually doesn't.
Yeah, that's the word too, isn't it? It rarely works in politics and movies and sports. It's tough. All right, number one. This is what everybody has been waiting for. So far, I don't really see much discrepancy as much as I thought there may be on the stream, simply because it's a list. So let's hit it. Everybody can get out, enjoy the games. We'll thank Jordan so he can get out of here as well. What is number one right now on your list? The number one birthday scene in the movie, Terry McBride.
The number one birthday scene in the movie is starring my number one actor, Mr. Bill Murray, and that movie is Rushmore, a phenomenal scene that kind of just gives you everything you need to know about the tone of that movie, where you're going with that movie. Gets up on the diving board with the cigarette in his mouth, just cannonballs to the bottom of the pool. Nobody's paying attention. It's just a phenomenal, pitch perfect Bill Murray scene. Great birthday scene, number one of all time in my book.
Really underrated Bill Murray movie as well. Great stuff, man. I feel like everybody came away with a full understanding of what to do tonight and what to bring up if this question ever pops up in a cocktail party or wherever else now people are out and about. Awesome stuff, Terry. Appreciate it as always, brother. And for Jordan, again, thank you, sir. Another fantastic show. Thanks to everybody out there. Like, subscribe, share. We're back tomorrow morning. More content right here on Awesemo.com. Good luck, everybody.
Fun stuff.